much for joining us this afternoon. We are going to move on from organizing and management of files to consider what Teams can do for us in the way of building our community. And it's got endless possibilities, and it's something that we've spent quite a long time looking at in the Microsoft Educator series, and those are webinars that are running alongside this program. As always, everything that we're doing is available in Microsoft Learn. If you still haven't signed up, it's really easy and free to do so. So you just need to open up a web browser and go to where the yellow finger is pointing in the sign-in box in the top right-hand corner. Once you've signed in, you will end up landing on your own personal page, which will track your own professional development and learning. And Microsoft Learn is just that. It's a curated set of resources that link to all of the training and qualifications that Microsoft has to offer, including Microsoft Advanced Educator. And what we're doing in the sessions that we're delivering is we're mirroring the content you would need to study if you were going to undertake the Microsoft Advanced Educator qualification. You can attend this session in isolation and you don't have to complete any of the rest. It just means that you wouldn't necessarily be accredited the Microsoft Advanced Educator Award. So as I said, Microsoft Educator is the entry-level program. We've been running those since the beginning of September, and they're ongoing all the way through to Christmas. They're introductory and for people that are looking to just start their practice in using the applications. Microsoft Advanced Educator are for those people that are ready to move to the next stage, probably beginning to not just use technology in their own practice, but go beyond that and help others that are around them. And then you've got Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert, which will begin our program of courses for in January. And that's for people that are driving transformation change in school. They've got a responsibility or a focus on changing something or implementing technology in a certain way. Back to today. So we are going to consider within the Microsoft Advanced Educator series is how Teams can be a hub of absolutely everything you do. So we'll look at then how it builds your community and how you might want to organize your team, but also how that refines and enhances areas such as communication and collaboration and making sure that you've got the opportunity to take advantage of all the features that are there. And that's part of demonstrating you're working at the Microsoft Advanced Educator level, is that you've gone beyond just getting to grips with the different features, but you're now putting them to good use and you're helping them to benefit you and the others around you in the wider school community. If you haven't dipped into Teams in a massive way previously, it's available on pretty much any platform these days. It can be accessed by signing into any modern web browser by going to www.office.com, and then you sign in with your email address and your password that you've been given for your M365 account. There's lots of dedicated apps that can be installed on things like tablet devices and phones if you're doing this with pupils and students. But equally, it's sometimes useful for staff using the messaging aspects that we'll look at during this session. You can get rid of those other third-party platforms and you can move across to Teams. But if you've got a Windows computer, or even if you're using an Apple Mac, or if you're using Linux or something like that, you can get apps to install on all of them. And fairly recently, it was made available for Chrome OS as well. So if you're using a Google device, you can still get into the Microsoft world from there. So if you're thinking of Teams, as I said, it's one hub to keep everyone connected, regardless of what their roles are, their focuses are. There'll be elements of Teams that would apply to them. Not every single piece of it, but certainly a lot of it will work for the way that everyone in school is conducting their life. And one of them is just keeping in contact with each other. You might want to do that with such as sending emails, but at the same time, you might want to do that with sending quick messages backwards and forwards like you may have been doing on other platforms, but now you can just keep it all in one place and you can use it here within Teams. If you've been doing that already, it'd be really good to hear what you've been doing, but at the same time, we can discuss that. If you've got any questions as we go through, I'm more than happy to answer them. As well as it being one place for everyone, it's one place for all of your applications. So you can have all of your Microsoft Office inside of there. You can plug in other websites that are there, but also other third-party products you might link into. So if you use Kahoots for questions in Classroom, if you've got VLEs, they'll come in. If you're using Wakelets, they're all available to keep everything within inside the Teams environment. When you're setting up your team, you do need to plan exactly what you're doing. So if you're in a primary school, you're probably going to have a single team for staff and then a single team for each classroom. And that's something we've been looking at quite extensively within the Microsoft Educator series. But if you're in a secondary, you might well organize one team per subject and then have all your different sets. So for instance, if it was year 7 science, you might have 7-1, 7-2, 7-3 science, all as different channels, but there's lots of different ways to do that. Or you might have a team for a particular class on your timetable and then have the different elements of it or units. So again, in the science analogy, you might have a set 7.1 science, but actually there's different channels. So one for biology, one for chemistry, one for physics. Or if you were a primary, you tend to keep everything just in what's called the general channel that's there for the default setting on all teams. That is really worth spending time planning it out, understanding how do people want it to work before you start to build. And most of the time now, building is an automated process. So there's lots of sync tools available. Turn It On has something called active cloud management, and you link up with your MIS system. And when there's a new pupil or a new member of staff or a new student, it automatically creates their account, enrolls them into the correct team. It archives teams at the end of the year. So you don't have to do any of that manually, which is just an absolute waste of anyone's time when you've got tools that can do it. Then when you're starting to launch teams and you're bringing it to your community, it's important to make everybody aware of what it is and keep them all with you. Regardless of how technophobic they are, you might need to think about who your digital champions are in your staff and how they're going to work with those members of staff that really aren't sure about all the features they've suddenly got at their fingertips. But you need to think more widely than that. How are you going to make sure the pupils know if you're going to use aspects of teams of them? Are you going to have people or student ambassadors that are going to add to the champions within the staff? Then you're going to need to make sure that your governors are on board and also the wider community of having parents, especially if you're going to start to bring parents in to class teams as the new features allow. And it may be that you need to have a phased approach, that you start with a particular year group and you work your way through the school. And that can be something that you can judge by which year group you think is most ready for it. That could be led by the staff you've got in there. It could be led by the age of the pupils or the students. It might be linked to the parents that you've got, because you know you've got some that are really willing to be guinea pigs and have a go at this whole school transformation and change. But it's really important to say that although there's lots of options, you wouldn't use all of them. You're going to cherry pick the ones that feel right for you and then prioritize them and start with the things that feel really natural and then build upon them and make sure that they become a set of tools that you can use in your arsenal to be successful in whichever way you wish. The types of teams that you can have, and we've been looking at these again in the Microsoft Educator series. Class teams are teaching and learning focused. What makes them unique more than anything else is they've got OneNote class notebook in there. So that's the OneNote with the teaching and learning features. If you are having governors, parents, trustees, you're probably going to use a PLC team. And if you are using staff, then it's going to be a staff team. If you really can't make your mind up and you're not entirely sure, you can use another team, but it's not as clearly defined as some of the others. So try to avoid others if you can and pick one of the first 3 if possible. Once you've got it, you've got lots of features in there and you can get a lot of people into a single team. And then you can start, as I said, to break it down into the channels in the team. Once you've done that, it's getting people familiar with the format in there. So they need to understand how to navigate their team, and the fact that the strip down the left-hand side is the me space. It's the things that are personal to them and individual to them. And then you've got the we space across the top. But it's making sure that when you do get into areas such as class teams, that pupils and students and parents all know where to find important information, where to go if you're going to use assignments to pick up homeworks, or classwork might be in OneNote class notebook. And it's building that repertoire of what you feel is really useful to introduce in your own school. So let's jump across and have a look at how that actually looks in reality. So I'm just going to share up my other screen, if my Teams is going to behave today, which it looks like it may not. Let me try that again. Just trying to move over. See if I can just force that to do that. There we go. So I'm using the Edge browser, as we said before. Any modern browser is absolutely fine. So if you're more of a Firefox person, use that. If you want Google Chrome browser, then you can do that. You can have any modern browser, but legacy old browsers will not work nicely with M365. So don't use Internet Explorer. It either won't load at all or it'll load partially and give you a lot of grief and crash out. To get into the web version, you need to log into www.office.com. As I've said, Teams is also useful is available and useful to have as an app on your computer. So once you've installed it, you'll need to log in once, but after that, you'll be able to then just open up your computer and it will come straight into Teams and you'll be in the environment that you wish to use. But for the purpose of today, I'm going to show you it in a browser. It's almost universal now, where practically everything that you've got in the web, in the full version, is in the web version. There's only some odd things. So because I'm a training environment here, I'm logged in as a member of staff inside of my team. And what I've got are some class teams, so such as the primary classroom and secondary classroom, intervention groups. I've got some PLCs, my governance team and my trust team, and I've also got a staff team here. So what you want to initially do is avoid people being blinded by all having the right to go away and create teams, which is a good reason to have a sync tool that takes care of that for you. If you give everybody the rights up here on the right hand corner, not just to join, so joining is universal for everyone, but you can restrict the create team. That stops it filling up with a team that's just personal to an individual or a couple of individuals and becoming a horrible dumping ground that nobody can navigate. Having it streamlined and then trying to break it up using channels inside of the team is far better, and it makes people feel like they're part of a community that's well structured, that they can navigate and they can find what they need. And there's nothing worse than moving from something on site like a server into another mess online. You just don't want it. So it comes back to that planning and making sure that everything is where it needs to be in the first place. So if you were going to do this with a governance team and a PLC, channels are over here on the left, and every single team has a general channel, and then you can add in other channels if you wish. So I was going to use my general channel as my full governance body meetings and all my notifications for when we're having them. But then I would create channels for my subcommittees so that they can all have discussions and store files like we looked at in the previous Microsoft Advanced Educator training, and they can be private to them. Additionally, if you're working in a trust and you're a school in a trust, you might have central trust operations, each having their own channel, and then certain key staff in each of the schools or academies that would link in with these, and there would be their own individual private areas. But you might have a whole school trust area because the trust might want to get some messaging through to all schools. So it might be that all the staff and all the schools do actually have access to the general channel for the trust. But if we go into the staff team here, we've got the general channel for the staff team, and in the general channel, all of my staff are enrolled in the general channel. So I'm using this as a bit of a whole staff scenario, although you could create another one, but then it leaves you with the question of what on earth you do with the general channel because you can't delete it. You can then make different channels underneath for subgroups of staff. So if you want to do that, you can manage that manually if it's not automated. You go to add channel and you give your channel a name. You give it a description, you decide whether it's standard and everyone can see it and then request to join, or you can make it private or shared. Private means it's got the padlock, and because I'm an administrator, I can see all those private channels. But if I cancel out of that, what you normally wouldn't see is any of the padlock channels at all, unless you've been made a member of that channel. Now, we are focusing on communities today, not organizing files. But one of the first things that you'll notice when you go across these is they all have their own discussions, and that's called your posts. And that's up the top in the we space. So the we space across the top is things we share as a group of people. The me space, everyone sees the me tools on the side, but they relate to me as an individual and the things that I've got, such as my own personal and private calendar, not a whole staff calendar, my chat with staff. And that's where we're going to go to first. So you can have, just like you would with messaging platforms outside of Teams, you can use the Teams app for staff to communicate with each other. And they simply press the button there. They choose a member of staff. So it might be that I need to speak to another teacher, and I am going to pick Henrietta. And what I need to do is speak to Henrietta in isolation. But if I needed to speak to a couple of teachers together, I could add multiple teachers in here and have small groups as well as individuals. But I'm just going to speak to Henrietta. So now I've got a private chat that sits here for me and for Henrietta that no one else can see. And then down the bottom, I've got messaging options that can be really minimalistic, but I could also expand them by clicking the pen and the letter. So I've got all my standard formatting tools across the top, my paragraphs, my indents. I can hyperlink websites if I want to. I can insert tables. So I've got a pretty good way of formatting text, fonts. I can have different colors of fonts, different sizes of fonts. And then on the bottom there, I can make things important. So if I really wanted to make sure that she saw what I was on about, it might be, please, can you confirm? And this could be because I'm in the senior leadership that, can you type today, you are able to make parents evening. Because I'm not sure if she's coming back to school and I've got 3 parents that need to see her. She's going to get notified now because I've marked it as urgent. It's going to prod her via her notifications every 2 minutes. So it's better than an email because it's like instant messaging. If you want to add something else in there, you could attach a file. So maybe you want to attach something from a school OneDrive or a SharePoint like we looked at last time, or you're going to put it from your own computer. So it could be the rota for parents' evening appointments. If you want to, you can add some emphasis in there with emojis. So you've got non-threatening, nice emojis. So it might be that I want this to come across as something that's helpful, not just a blunt demand. If you wanted to, and it's the appropriate form to do so, you've also got education-specific, non-offensive GIFs in there. You can, if you want to, if you've been having this discussion, turn it into a calendar meeting. So if you press that button, it will instantly launch the calendar and you can communicate with them over an appointment that's designated. And then you've got lots of other options. So you can link in stream videos, you can link in insights. But if you want to find more apps, you can click the 3 dots at the end and you can add other things in. And there's an endless amount of those if you click more apps, but we'll go into those in another occasion if you're going to consider apps. So when you posted, it will come up there and we've got that starting to build up as a conversation. If you want to go back in, you can click the dots and you can go in and you can delete things, or you can edit, you can reply, and that will build up as a conversation. So I've been doing a little bit here with Deborah, but I've been sharing files and folders. I've done a few of those animated GIFs, and then all of your chats will stay here and they'll be private to you unless you invite somebody else in. You can always add someone else into a chat, but at the same time, if you're finished with it, if you click on the dots and you want to not be annoyed by something, you can mute it, or you can hide it, or you can just delete it and get rid of it. And then it will be gone from your list of chats that you've got available to you. So another way of building community and chatting is using the chat function. It's meant to supplement emails, not replace emails. If you've got a quick question or something you need to get someone urgently, chat is your forum. If it's something weighty, paragraphs of information, maybe going to link to supporting documents and so forth, then it's going to be that you're going to use your email as it traditionally would be. Taking that one step further, if you then think I want to arrange a formal meeting, you can do it from the chat, but you can have a meet now option. So I won't do that because I'm running a Teams meeting and the computer can't handle 2 lots of videos and 2 lots of audio at the same time. But you can click meet now. It will start a video meeting like the one we're on now, and then you invite people to it. If you're going to do that spontaneously, make sure the people that you're inviting are not in a lesson or engaged in another meeting. You can organize meetings. So our whole staff meeting happens on Tuesdays every week, but I might need to meet tomorrow morning, and at 10 o'clock I need to have a professional development meeting, and that's going to be with, let's say, Henrietta, because she seems to be around a lot at the moment. So there's Henrietta, and then you can pop in your details or your agenda, and then you can send it. And then that will go into my calendar because I've sent it and I've set the meeting, but it will also appear in Henrietta's calendar, but no one else in the school is going to be any the wiser because this isn't a shared whole school calendar. This is my Outlook calendar. It's just that I can access it from within Teams because Teams is that single hub and it keeps all my communications in one place. If you ever decided to in the future, you can upgrade your license and replace your old phone system with what's called a VoIP system, which links into Teams. And if you are setting classwork, which we've been looking at in the Microsoft Educator series, and homework, your assignments that you're setting for your pupils and students can be accessed from clicking assignments. But most of the time, you're going to be working within your team. So if we duck back over to our staff team, and we go to the general tab, what we've got in here are the posts. Now the posts work in a very similar way to the private chats which we had previously, but unlike here where it's private between you and another member of staff or a small group of staff, if you are posting within a team, whether it's the general channel or whether it's a separate channel where you've added people in and made them members, it will be visible to everybody else that is in there, and they will be able to use the reply function, unless you designate otherwise, to respond to what's going on there. And I'll say this could be useful. I'll leave it at that. So I'm then going to post that, and you can get these conversations going. If when you're starting a new conversation, and you've got the options here, you can choose if you want people to reply or not. So it might be that only moderators, which are administrators, can reply. And you can also notify people in multiple different teams and channels. So if you click there, you can select it, and then you'll be able to get posts. So if you wanted the trust team to know in their general channel, I could update it, and then I can send this post once, and my communication will go to everyone. I can add in a title and a main body of text if it's a conversation, but if I want to make an announcement like the whole staff meeting above, I can change it to an announcement, and then I can have different colored backgrounds. I can even upload pictures to make it more visually appealing or stand out. You've got the same sort of formatting options along the top in many ways, except instead of the urgent being at the bottom, it moves to the top here, so it's an important. You can still attach files, still got emojis, giffies. You've got stickers as well if you think it's appropriate, although I tend to use those more with going into doing things such as rewarding pupils or trying to help them understand when I'm really pleased with something. But you might use it with staff. It really depends on how casual you're being with your communications. You've also then over here got all the normal wakelets and the add-ins, and then you've got the apps that you can plug in here as well, such as if you wanted to put in a Microsoft form or go to get more apps, and then you'll be able to bring in a whole library of apps there if you want to. So it's completely up to you. If you decide that you're not going to do this, you can always just click on the recycle bin on the top corner, and it'll say, do you really want to discard it? And there you go. So over a period of time, it can build up to quite an important communications. A lot of people are starting to move away from having traditional morning briefings, and instead of having a piece of paper that's stuck on the wall in the classroom, which you can't see unless you're there, the morning briefing notices go on things like the general tab of the whole staff, because then everyone can see them at any time. Equally, you can move these into other areas. So you could have something like a OneNote for staff notebooks. So in here, and we've done some quite extensive training in the Microsoft Educator series on OneNote, so I won't go into too much depth, but you've got sections and pages. So think of OneNote like a ring binder, sections like the cardboard dividers with the tabs, and pages are the individual pages that you can clip in if you're having an analogy with the real world. But what you've got is a leader only area, which I would see in private. You've got content library where you can put information for staff if they want to go and read it, but they can't edit it. And then you've got a collaboration space, such as if you were asking for contributions for the next staff meeting or doing staff meeting minutes, those could go in there. And then you've got everything in one place and people can come and do it. So if you're not going to post the highlights of the morning briefing in posts, you could have a tab in the OneNote that people come to, and it's absolutely open for everyone to come in and see if it's in the collaboration space, read only in the content space, but people that are administrators can add to it and update it. But if not, if you want to make it private and you're going to bring it out at a later date, and for me, I'm drafting what I'm going to use in future meetings, I'm going to keep those notes in there. So you've got the option to do it absolutely any way you wish. and that's fine for whichever way you want to work. But as I said at the beginning, you need to think about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it, and is it right for you as a school? Is it right for your staff? You're also able to tap into teaching and learning elements. So we'll spend more time looking at this, but you can see how your school as a group of pupils and students are feeling about different things if they're using Reflect in their class teams. We've got a separate session on this in Microsoft Advanced Educator in session 5, all around using data and using emotions. But what you can do is you can pose questions, and then if you wanted to say, look, we've surveyed our pupils about how they're feeling today, you can then click on them and you can see across a school or across a group just exactly when they were sampled today, this morning, how they are feeling about being in school or how they're feeling about a particular element of being in school. And then you can take that further by drilling down and looking at it by individual pupils, or you can look at it by class activities. You could also get insights in something else we're going to spend time looking at in future meetings. All the data that's being gathered together here in M365 is accessible on what's called the insights. You can look at it individually per class in the class teams, but you can pull it together in the staff teams so that if you wanted to find from all our classes what are the words that our pupils are finding tricky at the moment, so maybe dictate what's going to be a year group word list or a whole school strategy, you can do that in there. What's trending at the moment, what's going to be our most frequent Reflect feedback. There's all sorts of information, and you can filter that via different areas of teams to drill down if you want. And you can have that available and open to all staff, or you can filter it down so certain things appear on the general tab because that's more relevant to everyone. But if it was the SLT tab, you might have greater depth or a different type of dashboard. Over here, I've also put in some tasks. So if I know that maybe I'm in a primary school in this scenario and I've got people that are doing tasks, that you could have tasks that you're assigning to different departments when you speak to them. So I've got to do a curriculum review, and what you can do is you can tick things off and they will then be tracked by dates that they're due. You can assign people that are going to be responsible for doing that. And it's one of those things where it's really useful for the whole school sometimes to know what's going on with other departments, but also people know when they've got to hit deadlines. So simply pinning the to-do or the tasks app in at the top is really useful. Now you do all this by pressing the plus at the top. And by default, you only have posts and files and a notebook. But say that you wanted to pin in a community channel calendar, because you want to not just have your own private calendar on the side, but you want to have a whole staff calendar, and it's good to use that so that everyone knows what's going on. This is the route to do it. So you click add, and what it will do is it will provision that, and you will then end up being able to name your calendar. So I'm going to call this whole staff calendar. And I'm going to add it. And then at the top there's the whole staff calendar. So I can start getting that and being able to do this with a view to, again, improving communication, improving collaboration. Everyone's got everything in one place. Now their whole staff calendar is in the we space at the top, but their personal calendar is over here on the left. So they can quite seamlessly move between the two things in the one place, and they've got all their tools to hand. So the philosophy from what we're trying to achieve today is to get you to consider, with all the possibilities that are available, looking at this from an advanced educator perspective. If you're someone that's going to be creating the vision and steering this, which you would be if you're working at advanced educator level, it's what's the bits of teams that would work for us? Where could we start? Where's the beginning of our journey? Are we simply just going to post things to each other and start to explain to people when it's relevant to post versus when it's relevant to email? And then we might bring in something like Smart Notebook, and we'll start to explore how to keep meeting minutes in there instead of having meeting minutes being filed somewhere else, maybe on a SharePoint or on a server shared area. There's lots of different options available, but the thing that you need to do now is plan, talk to each other, understand the requirements of what people need, and then take that to the final conclusion of starting to build and flesh out your teams. And then only then, when you get into it, will it start to make sense. A lot of schools find it really useful to use this with small groups of staff, whether it's your digital champions or people that have said they're open to that change. Get them to do it, and then get them to then share that with the wider staff as part of a phased rollout and a launch. You might do this alongside training up pupils if you're going to start to launch class teams at the same time. We're focusing on staff here at the moment, but it's perfectly right that if you might enjoy and find the benefits on a class and organizational side, that you might want to do this for teaching and learning. But really, the path through is yours. It's not prescribed, it's not dictated in any way, and you'll pick up the bits that you need to that are relevant to you at any given time. So really, I'm going to open up to you now exactly what you want to do. Are there any questions, anything you've been trying to attempt yourself that you want to share with people here? Anything you'd like me to go over in a bit more detail? I see that Jenny's typing a question there. That's absolutely fine. If you're watching the recording, I am going to end the recording now. You're more than welcome to contact Turn It On if you need to. And don't forget, you can always sign up for future training sessions at www.turniton.co.uk.